Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel AWS DevOps Niche Level. So in this video, we are going to see a lab demo on how to set up Prometheus on a AWS EC2 instance. So a few weeks before, I had posted a video on how do we set up Prometheus and Grafana as a parts within the Kubernetes cluster. So I had set up a Kubernetes cluster using EKS, and I had provided a lab demo on how do you install Prometheus and Grafana as a pod, right? A container within the cluster. So if you have not watched that video, you can click on the link above and you can go through that video. But in this video, if at all we want to set up Prometheus on a standalone virtual machine or a standalone server, how do we deploy that? So that is what I'm going to explain. So let's quickly go through about Prometheus. Prometheus is a monitoring tool. As we know, it's a very popular monitoring tool used these days, specifically for monitoring the applications. So whichever is running as a microservices, right? So it's a popularly adopted monitoring tool for the applications running as containers. Okay, and typically it is an open source systems monitoring and alerting toolkit, which is coming from CNCF. And it is collecting and storing the metrics as a time series data. So it basically scrapes the endpoints for the metrics and it keeps collecting the data and keeps them aggregating over a period of time. Okay, and if at all we want to query the data from Prometheus for the values that it has collected for various performance metrics, the query language used is the PromQL, right? And there is a component within Prometheus which is called service discovery that will help in finding the new services and whatever we need to monitor. Okay, and there are exporters that will help to monitor the third-party components. So if at all we want Prometheus to monitor any third-party services, it could be a database or it could be a messaging queue, etc. Then we'll have to install the appropriate exporters that is available on the Prometheus website, and through the exporter, Prometheus would be able to scrape endpoints and get us the metrics. Okay, and it can also send the alerts to the alert manager. It is another component within Prometheus that is running on port 9093, and Prometheus by itself, it is actually running on the port 9090. Okay, so this slide shows the architecture of Prometheus. So we have three main processes within Prometheus. So one is the push gateway component. It is also called as the data retrieval component. So data retrieval worker process. So this is responsible for scraping the appropriate endpoints and pulling the metrics from the endpoints. Okay, so that is the reason it is a retrieval component. And whatever metrics are being pulled from the endpoints, so those metrics will be stored on the inbuilt time series database within the Prometheus server. So that is the second component wherein we have a time series database. Then the third component is the HTTP server. So how do you interact with Prometheus via the web GUI? So that is being facilitated by the HTTP server process. So you can interact with Prometheus via the web GUI, and if at all you want to have a view of the alerts generated by Prometheus on the alerts manager console, we have a GUI for that. Then if at all you want to get the value of the metrics by executing the PromQL queries, we can use the web GUI. So that is the third process, HTTP server, which helps us to interact with the Prometheus web GUI. So these are the three main components we have within Prometheus. And how Prometheus monitors various layers. So for example, if you want to monitor the servers, you want to monitor the applications, and you want to monitor the third-party services. So how Prometheus achieves in monitoring each of these layers or each of these tiers, right? For example, if you want to monitor the servers via Prometheus, it can be done via node exporter, right? And the server can be a Linux system, it can be a Windows system. What you do is you download the node exporter component, which is available from the Prometheus repository. And this node exporter will have to be installed on the Linux system or the Windows system from where we need to collect the metrics. And once this node exporter is deployed on the appropriate servers, then it will be exposing an endpoint for Prometheus to scrape the metrics and show the value of the metrics. Okay. So for servers, we use node exporter to be monitored via Prometheus. Then applications, how the Prometheus monitor various applications. So that is done via the client libraries. So there will be a client libraries available for each of the applications. For example, if our application is Java based, there is a client library available for Java. If the application is PHP based, then we have a client library available for PHP. So through the client libraries, Prometheus is able to extract the various performance metrics from the application, right? And for monitoring the third-party services, as I highlighted before, if you want to monitor a database or if you want to monitor some queuing services like Apache, Kafka, etc., right? Then we have to deploy the appropriate third-party exporters for Prometheus to get the data from the third-party services. Okay. So I have two links pasted here. One is for the exporters and one is for the client libraries. So I will be putting it in the description of my video, so you can actually go through the links and get more details. Okay, so now what does Prometheus monitor? So Prometheus is used for monitoring the servers. The servers can be of any operating system flavor, and it would be helpful to monitor the single application, Apache servers, services like database, etc. Then whatever metric that Prometheus monitors, it is called as a target. So which units are monitored of those targets? For example, I'm monitoring a server. What metrics I would monitor? CPU utilization, memory utilization, space utilization, right? And if it is an application, it would be the number of request count, the request duration, the exceptions count, etc. Okay. So for the application, in regard to the application performance, we have three main metrics. One is the load on the application. What is the overall response time of the application? The number of errors and exceptions generated by the application. Okay. So by using those applications appropriate client libraries, we can have Prometheus expose the metrics endpoint and collect the value of those application related metrics. Okay, so team, now it's time for jumping into the lab demo. So these are all the steps that we will do. First, we will launch the Linux EC2 instance in AWS. Then we will create a user for Prometheus, because it's always a better practice to create a separate user where Prometheus will run, and do not really, do the Prometheus administration via the root user. Okay, so we have to avoid root user. Then we will download and install Prometheus. Then we will configure Prometheus as a service, which will be a very important step. Then we will just quickly see how to invoke the GUI of Prometheus. Okay, so now let us get into the lab demo, and let me open the lab instructions to set up Prometheus. First is launching of the Linux EC2 instance. So I'm in the AWS console. Let me quickly launch a Linux instance. So I'll click launch instances here, and I will name it as Prometheus. I will select the Linux 2 AMI. Key pair, let me select the existing key pair. Or better, I will create one new key pair. Okay, so in regard to the security group, for now, I'm going to open just the SSH port from my IP address, and let me go ahead and launch the instance. Okay, so now the instance has been launched. It is already in the running state. Now let us go ahead and log into this instance. Let me upload the keys. I will switch the user to the root. Okay, so now let us follow the instructions one by one. So the Linux instance has been launched. Now I will create a user named Prometheus and we will add that user to the wheel group. How do we do that? I will say user add Prometheus. Let me set the password for the user. Password Prometheus. I'll use the same password as the username. Okay, just one moment. Try to redo it again. Okay, so now the password has been updated. Now we will add the user to the wheel group. What it means is adding some entries in the sudo.us file for the Prometheus user. So I will search for wheel here. And here you can see we need to give some permissions to this user to run all the commands. And if at all I want to switch to this user without prompting for a password, I need to add an entry in this without a password section also, right? So here I'll add an entry, Prometheus, all is equal to all. Let me copy these as well. All equal to all and no password. Okay, so done. We have added the user to the wheel group. Now what I will do, I will go into the home directory of Prometheus. I will switch the user to the Prometheus. So I will say sudo su minus Prometheus, right? Now I give the ID command to verify that I am as a Prometheus user currently. I also give whoami command, verify that. Okay. And we are in the home directory of Prometheus, and this is where I'm going to download and install the Prometheus. Okay. So Prometheus is ideally available on the GitHub repository. So, or it is also available from this repository as well, prometheus.io. If I go to this link, you can see here, this is the link for Prometheus, and I can click download here. And if I come down, you can see the packages available separately for, the Darwin architecture that we have for Linux, we have for Windows, etc. So whatever binaries that you want, you can actually right click it. You can say copy link address and you can do a wget of these packages. Okay. So now I need a Linux based package. So what I will do, I'm going to execute this command. Sudo wget, the package is available in the github.com Prometheus releases folder. So let me go ahead and download this. Now I will do a extraction of these packages with this command r-xvzf. Give the package name. Okay, now as part of the best practice, let us go ahead and remove the package, whatever we downloaded. Okay, so now what we need to do, before we install Prometheus, or rather before we start running Prometheus, Prometheus is typically going to run on the port 9090 by default, right? So if you want to access the Prometheus GUI on the browser, you'll have to first open the port 9090 in the security group. That is what I'm going to do now. Let me go back to the EC2 instance. I click security here. I click the security group. Click edit inbound rules. I'll add a rule, custom TCP port 9090 from anywhere IPv4, right? So let us go ahead and enable this rule in the security group. And now we will try to start the Prometheus using this particular command. So /Prometheus --a config file is Prometheus.yaml. Okay. So now if I go back to the Prometheus directory, I will navigate to this Prometheus 2.51.1 directory. So under that you can see some binary files. We have Prometheus, Prom tool, etc. And there are some subdirectories as well, right? And the default configuration file used by Prometheus, it is actually the Prometheus.yaml file. Okay. So currently it is all having the default configurations. Let me quickly go through that Prometheus.yaml. So you can see here that we have a global configuration defined for the scrape interval. So whatever endpoints that Prometheus has to monitor, with what frequency it has to scrape the metrics from those endpoints. So it is set as 15 seconds. Then we have a section for the alert manager configuration, which is typically running on the port 9090. And if you see under the scrape configs, so we have the default target. So by default, Prometheus is going to scrape its own endpoint, which is running on the port 9090. Okay. So we are not going to make any changes to the configuration file currently. We are going to start Prometheus fetching the default configurations from this file. So this is a command to start the Prometheus. So already, the command is executed and you can see that Prometheus is already running. Okay, so we will just verify if you are able to access the Prometheus GUI. So let me copy the IP address and I will say :9090. So now you can see that we are able to access the web GUI of Prometheus. And if I there are various options here. You have the alerts window, there is a graph window, status, etc. So if I click status and if I click the target, you can see that the default target, whatever was specified in the Prometheus.yaml file, Prometheus is able to discover that target. Okay, so whatever metrics are getting exposed on this target, Prometheus would be able to capture all those metrics. Okay, so this is the endpoint where Prometheus can get the metrics. The state is up and running. And you can also see, some discovered labels. The address is localhost :9090, the own Prometheus endpoint. And from where the metrics are getting exposed, it is from /metrics. So for example, in this URL, if I say /metrics, this is where you can see the complete list of metrics that Prometheus can scrape from this endpoint. Okay. So any endpoint that you expose, the metric should be available in that endpoint /metrics URL. Okay. The way with which we have started Prometheus, it is not a recommended way or best way to start Prometheus. Okay. Why? Because you can see that now the Prometheus is running as a foreground process. And if I give a Control-C here, that is it. The Prometheus process will stop. Okay. So now if I go back to my browser and let me refresh my screen here. So Prometheus is already down. You can see it. We got the message, the site can't be reached. So only for this reason, we will have to configure and run Prometheus as a service. That is very important. So how do we create a Prometheus service file? That is what I'm going to show you as part of our remaining demo. Okay. So now with the Control-C, the foreground process is already stopped. Now we will try to create a Prometheus service file. So what I do is I will create a service file under this directory, etc systemd system, and the name of the service file is prometheus.service. So let me do a sudo vi and create this file. And let me paste this content here. Okay, so what exactly we are defining as part of this service file? So there are 4 sections. One is unit. In the unit, we have given the description for the service file. It is the Prometheus. and we want this service to be online. Whenever the network is online, at the same time, if there is a network glitch and once a network is back online, we want this service also to be online, right? So that is what we are defining in the unit. And under the service section, I have added 3 parameters here, basically 4 parameters. One is it should run as a root user, and type should be simple, and the service should always restart on failure, and exec start. This is where we are mentioning how to start the service, right? So you can see that we are giving the full path where the Prometheus binary is available, /home/Prometheus. This is the Prometheus directory, and this is the Prometheus binary. And the config file also, we have defined the full path here, right? The actual config file is a prometheus.yaml. And under the install, we have given wanted by is equal to multi-user.target. So whichever user logs into the system, this service file configuration is going to apply for all the users. Okay, so this is how you create a service file for Prometheus. Let me go ahead and save this file. Now, in order to reinitialize, the changes, whatever we made in the service file, we have to give this command systemctl daemon-reload, right? Let me execute this command. Systemctl daemon-reload. Now I'm going to start the Prometheus as a service directly with this command, systemctl start Prometheus. So previously we are using a different format, that is /Prometheus --config.file. So this is not a recommended way to do it, right? So you have to create a service file and start it via the systemctl command. So let me execute this command, sudo systemctl start Prometheus. Okay, now we will check the status of Prometheus. So you can see here, Prometheus is now running as a service. So I can also say sudo ps-ef Prometheus. Okay, so you can see here, now it is running as the way how we were configured in the service file, right? The Prometheus.service file. Okay, now there is another command also that we can use just to see whether the configuration is fine on the Prometheus.yaml file. So this is a command to check that, /promtool check config Prometheus.yaml. So suppose you are making some configuration changes to the YAML file and you want to do a syntax check, you can use this command, right? So you can see here, it is giving a message, success, Prometheus.yaml is a valid config file. Okay, now let us go back and access the Prometheus console again. Now, because we have started this as a service, you can see that Prometheus is back live now. And if I go back to the main console, so you can see here, this is our main console. So if I click the alerts, if you have configured some alerts, you can see the list of those alerts if they have violated the thresholds. And there is a graph window as well where you can search for the metrics here, and you can click execute and get a graph for that particular metric. And under the status, you have multiple options available. So typically, if you want to monitor some endpoints, we can actually check this targets tab, and whatever endpoints that we have added in the configuration file, that will be available on the targets tab, and you will be able to see the status of those targets, whether it is up or down. Okay, so that is a very short video on Prometheus team. How do you set up Prometheus on a standalone virtual machine, and how to configure it as a service and run it as a service. Okay. So just a quick preview. So we launched a Linux EC2 instance. We created a user for Prometheus. Then we had given the proper permissions for the user in the sudo-us file. Then we downloaded and installed Prometheus. Then we configured the Prometheus as a service. And post that, we were able to see that the default target, whatever is mentioned in the Prometheus.yaml config file, it was discovered in the target section. Okay. So I hope this video was helpful. So if you like this content, please press the like button, team. And if you find my content helpful, you can even subscribe to my channel, and you can even share it with your known circles. So that's all I had for this video, and I will meet you all in my next video. Thank you all so much.